Good morning. Thank you for joining us on the GSK Supply Exchange webinar today on behavioural change for energy efficiency. I can see a number of attendees have joined us already, but let's wait a couple of minutes before we get started for any late arrivals. Bear with us 2 minutes. Hello, okay, I think everyone has now joined. Welcome again to today's webinar on stimulating behavioural change for energy efficiency. This actually follows on from one we had last week on the business case for energy efficiency, and it's the second of 5 webinars looking at challenges and successes of carrying out an effective energy efficiency programme. At the end, on the 5th webinar, will be in the first week of March, and we'll be closing the series with an example of a successful energy efficiency project from start to finish, so a case study. And I'll also be issuing some supporting documents and templates through the exchange over the coming weeks. Today, we are joined again by Louise Wallis from Schneider Electric's Energy and Sustainability team. She's got a background in business management, and over the last few years she's supported the delivery of metering and datering services for clients before moving to where she is now to look more generally at energy and sustainability in a more focused manner. She works with quite a wide range of clients, essentially focusing on all aspects of energy efficiency and management. I'd also like to take the opportunity to remind you that at the end of this, there will be about 5 or 10 minutes to answer any questions you have. If you want to submit a question, then please do so via the chat function on your panel at any point throughout the presentation. If you've got one also that comes to mind once the webinar is finished, then please just email me and I will get back to you. Finally, we'll also be uploading this to the webinar. We're uploading this webinar to the Supply Exchange so you can watch it at a later date or share with your colleagues. And we've also got last week's webinar, which is available to view on the Exchange. Please note that GSK does not endorse Schneider Electric or any other third party. So without further ado, I will pass you over to Louise, who will begin the presentation.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everybody. So as Tom mentioned, last session, we spent a bit of time looking at why it's important to build a business case for efficiency. And just to quickly summarise that, it encompasses these 3 key elements. So firstly, go that bit further to map out and understand your plan. So accelerate that time that it takes to achieve savings. Secondly, break down both the internal and external silos. So they really need to vanish in order for a program to be effective. And thirdly, the final thing was develop your people. So all about enhancing their skills, giving them the tools they need to actually have an impact. So today we're going to be looking at really how we go about doing those things. Where do we start? So we all know that energy efficiency is the fastest, cheapest and cleanest way to tackle our energy dilemmas, and also that the technology exists today to both identify but also to help realise those efficiencies. But even if all the best technology is implemented, will the desired positive behavioural change that's required to move forwards towards the vision be sustained? There are some well-documented key factors to ensuring that behavioural change is not only adopted successfully, but that it's also able to develop in line with the requirements of your organisation. And I think that's the key part there. So research, a lot of the campaigns that we've seen in the past with our customers that haven't necessarily come to fruition are the ones that have been jumped into head first. So you need to invest time in research. What's going on in the heads of the people within your organisation? Ask the questions. It's about getting people's thoughts and sometimes even emotions out, if we're honest. So canvas across the organisation and try and understand the reasons behind attitudes. You know, why are they not doing something that you'd like them to be doing? Is it because they don't necessarily feel a responsibility? Is it a fear factor? Do they even know how to do what it is you want them to do? So look at all of the things that might encourage people to act in the way that you'd like them to. Are they driven by financials, or would helping the business be an incentive in itself? So really get to grips with that. Behaviour, what do you actually want to achieve? Is it cost reduction? Is it carbon savings? Is there a requirement to improve public perception of your organisation? So you need to understand where you're trying to get to, and this will obviously help you choose the best path. So once you've understood what it is you want to achieve, then the focus needs to shift to the priorities that are relevant to your organisation. And this is going to really determine the behaviours that you need to address. People probably seems like an obvious one. You don't need to change every individual within your organisation, thankfully. It's about selecting the right people to target. So sometimes we can push our agendas on the already converted rather than focusing on the key people who really need to be brought into that change. So multi-layered approach. This is really all about the way in which you might run a program or an event or develop your collateral. So try and look at it from multiple angles to ensure that whatever you're doing, whatever you implement, is successful. And finally, feedback. So without actually monitoring what you're doing, how are you ever going to know if it's had or is having an impact? So it's really important to gather the feedback, ask the questions, monitor those changes. Without that, you can't really adapt or improve the way that you're going about things. And of course, the catch to all of this is really that you can't actually change people. So people will rarely fundamentally change the way they think about things. So for example, they're unlikely to change their morals that they base their decisions on. But what you can do is look at their environment, look at information on all of the factors that surround an individual, and look at how you can change those to influence how that person behaves. So in summary, it's all about change management rather than just people. So some people will change, but the key here is really about impacting change directly through the organisation. So the 3 steps to change management as we see them are building awareness. So how do we do that? Obviously impacting the change, and finally consolidating that change. So we're going to look at some of that today. So the first step into the journey of getting that buy-in, of making sure that you can get the right results, is to set up the right vision. Again, may seem obvious, but when you do this, we advise that you do it with the corporate entity to remotely scan all of the sites, to provide all of the data that you need to make a decision that's going to materialise ultimately. Don't base it on assumptions. Go and work, albeit from a remote perspective, use the data tools that you have available to you, list out all of the sites. You don't have to go to each one of them, but get that information that you need to make the right strategy, which obviously will later be able to be executed at site level. So you need to develop what we refer to as the single roadmap that includes all of the components of the programme, including the tools that you're going to be using to create the plan, the overall targets that you're going to be using at regional, site, company level, and all the different activities that will need to happen. So things like communication, governance, decision making, KPIs, etc. So in a nutshell, once you've completed the vision and the path is clear, how then can you then move it forward? So the first stage we would recommend is the workshop approach. A workshop for us is where all of the people from the site realm and the corporate realm all get together around the same table with a common goal. And that, in the first instance, is to make it happen for a particular site. So this goes back to the previous session where we covered how important it is to actually create the right environment and to make time and space for people to actually be able to collaborate. So some of the topics that we would talk about, establish a performance plan. This is going to be the application of your overarching vision document in line with the needs of a particular site. So it's important, essential actually, to have your experts in the room. That way, any decisions being made, any topics being discussed, they're all being sanctioned by the teams who actually run the site. So these are key people that you really need to engage and have brought into the overall programme. The content of a performance plan should include the action plan. So all of the different steps that you will take in the journey to make sure that you meet your requirements to deliver your goals, whether it be in 5 years, 3 years, 10, whatever it might be. You need an overarching management plan. So this is the structure of KPIs, the team that you need to put in place to deliver this, how you're going to measure and report the savings of your programme, all in a way that can be consistent across the organisation. You need to ensure that all of the people participating are learning something. And it might be that they weren't aware of targets that they perceive as not directly impacting them, for example, or they might not even realise why certain projects get pushed back without consideration from various parts of the business. But if they're learning, it's naturally going to make them more engaged in the overall process. I think it's also key to just establish again that they understand, so that they improve their skills, they improve their knowledge, and that they're actually given the tools to make it work so they can run with it. If they don't have that, they're going to feel like they can't engage in it. So a lot of the challenges when it comes to people are based on them not feeling like they know what's going on, not really knowing how to do something, or in some cases, even why they should bother. This process really encourages that open discussion. So it gives responsibility and ownership to individuals, but also I would suggest a level of understanding across all of the different roles within an organisation. So just to split it out a little bit further, when we talk about the action plan, this is really where we talk about the engine, as it were, of the entire programme. So this is going to be the power behind any changes that you make. And as with any engine, it's going to be powerful, but it doesn't necessarily make sense on its own. An engine's always built for a purpose. So the overall action plan needs to be determined by different priorities according to the site. So focus on the operational technology on the site, talk about machinery, talk about production lines, about the way the production lines are being run. Come up with different strategies that can combine all of the actions. So a couple of examples of those strategies could be either focusing first on your operational changes, so make sure that you can use your existing equipment and people in a better way. So you don't have to invest the heavy capex that's required to upgrade the technology and skill set. And the second step of that would be to really build that credibility to further travel down that path, and there find some of the bigger projects, the meatier opportunities to address. The other option is to combine them. So look at the immediate actions alongside the long-term actions. Do it simultaneously. So the way that we would recommend pocketing all of the activities is through 4 different categories. So really break it down. So I hope everybody's still with me. So everything that you do in terms of efficiency can either be understood as something that is either replicable or customized. Now, when we talk about replicable, we're referencing all the things that we see with the customers we work with, or within the sites of customers that we work with, There's effectively a packaged solution that can be configured to order, as opposed to being engineered to order. So the strategy for those two types of solution is to launch them in a transversal way. So on the slide, category A and category B. So category A are simple solutions. So whether it be hardware, automation products, energy management systems, things that can be sourced and implemented, ideally through a single company. And I probably should say at this stage that Schneider can obviously do that. Category B would be more about your specialist things, so retrofit lighting, efficiency pumps, etc. And again, without it becoming a promotional discussion, for our clients, we orchestrate this process for them, and we work with recommended and trusted specialist third parties to deliver the best solution. So always make sure that you're looking in that way. And look to launch both category A and category B solutions across all of the sites where it would be suitable. It goes back to that replicable solution. So the other topic, your customized solutions, we'd recommend splitting into category C and D. Category C, this is all the actions we mentioned earlier. So the things that could be done without the need for any CapEx, common sense activities, as it were. So it's about things like using your equipment better. It's about altering your parameters, improving your maintenance operations, effectively changing your behaviour. So these are the things that we would focus on first. Anything that can accelerate that time to savings. Again, we touched on the importance of that as opposed to just looking at payback in the last session a little. So if any of you were there, then I'm sure you'll remember that. Category D is your big projects. So usually equipment intensive, CapEx intensive. They need engineering as a detailed activity. But obviously, if the savings do make sense and they can be embarked upon, then even if they take a bit longer, we would still always recommend that you schedule them into the overall action plan. So the key here is not to just focus on one and forget about the rest, which a lot of people tend to do. And it's understandable, everybody's busy, everybody's got their own agenda, but it's really about how to combine them in a way that makes sense to your site and to your corporate priorities. So just to give an example of how we would do it in a workshop environment, we tend to go very old school, so post-it notes. On the left, this is an example from an automotive company in Germany, and on the right, pharmaceutical in the US. So both of these companies adopted the same process for deploying the workshops. And as you can see from this, it's a very visual exercise. So we use paper rather than screens. We use simple aids, bright colours that make it easy to understand and follow. And this is basically what it looks like at the end of a workshop, where each of those steps represent a particular project or a particular energy conservation measure. So the individual post-its are actually being scheduled based on the priorities, both financially and sustainability-wise, that were selected for each of those categories. It might seem simple, but it's designed to be simple. So usually the first 6 months of the programs are about taking category C actions, so those non-CapEx actions. And the reason we do that is in order to generate enough funding to then pay for the transversal actions that are not only going to be launched and implemented at the one site that you're focusing on, but then can be replicated out to all suitable sites, which then gets you to the actions that you know are going to be CapEx intensive. So we very much see that as the third step. And what I would say is if you follow those guidelines, the cash flow of the entire program starts to make a lot more sense for a financial entity. It really allows you to reduce that time to savings, improve the cash generation of the program overall, but definitely gain momentum and, most importantly, sustain it through that journey. So what this slide's showing is basically an end-to-end process of optimization. So how you would assess, validate, implement, and most importantly, manage those non-CapEx related actions. So to summarize, define it, prove it, make sure that that change can be supported throughout the whole process, take the case and replicate it. So all of the time impacting change directly through every level of the organisation. So just to finish up on this, this is an example of a global program that we actually ran for a global packaging company. So this was the pilot site. This was the output of the discussion around the pilot site. And I think this really demonstrates how much and how quickly an impact this approach can have. So you'll see there on the right-hand side, during the actual workshop itself, €77,000 worth of savings were identified. So these will have been the non-capex actions, so low effort, high impact. Again, think about that time to savings. So you instantly get that. The program, importantly, was developed by the company. So it was developed by their people. They were involved in every aspect of it at every stage. It was coming from them. So the output of this, 15% savings planned over the next 3 years, with a 1.4-year payback for the overall program. And you can see just from some of the pointers on there, obviously it incorporated things like the KPIs, it had a model to it, it met the governance requirements. Yeah, so overall, I would say a successful program. So next session, obviously we've looked at the engine today. The next session we'll be looking at the vehicle in which the engine is built for, basically, and touching on how to sell and market energy efficiency and looking more at that management plan aspect. So that's it for today, short and sweet. Tom, I don't know if there's any questions that have come through.
Yeah, thanks, Louise. That was a very informative webinar there. We have got a few questions. I think the first one links back to something you were talking about earlier about making sure everyone learns something from attending a workshop. So this person says that they've identified the individuals and groups they want to engage with as part of the strategy, but it's difficult to gauge their level of understanding. So what they're trying to avoid, I think, is telling people what they already know and getting off on the wrong foot from the start. So yeah, how can they make sure that everyone learns something from the process and individuals don't get upset?
Okay, what I would say is it's very rare that in this environment there'll be anybody that doesn't learn anything if you've got the right people in the room. And it's not really about gauging it before you engage with these people. I would say it's more about doing it while you engage with them. So rather than kind of telling them what's happening, giving them answers, actually ask the questions. So it's them that's driving it. So, you know, get them to come up with the answers. They're telling you what the issues are, what the challenges are, what they want to achieve. And that all feeds into the wider process. So if you've got all of the different streams of the business, then I would be very surprised if there's anybody in the room that doesn't learn something, even if it isn't perceived as impacting them directly. It will go towards that kind of overall corporate vision. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's also sort of like a self-review of your own role, just in the process of talking it through. I mean, you always learn things from that. If you're going to encourage people to review what they're doing, by default, they're going to learn something.
Exactly, and it's great for them. It gives them the forum to then explain to other people, you know, what their role is, how they go about things, if they have challenges, how that impacts the other parts of the business. So it's a really good environment to do that in. Yeah.
I've got another one here. They're at the stage where they know where the energy spend is highest in which departments, and they're now at the point of trying to engage with the staff in those areas. But what they're struggling with is how they might quantify any the actual savings that occur from any changes in behaviour. So I know you mentioned the chart for the German manufacturer where you plot the energy savings created against behavioural changes.
Yeah.
So I think what approach would you take to quantify what changes might yield in terms of energy savings?
Okay, so again, if you take it as a step-by-step basis, the starting point for everything is always data. So if If they know where their energy consumption is highest, then that's obviously a very good starting point. They've got data that's telling them that. So look at that data in depth. Are there gaps in that data? If there are, do they need to address them to properly track anything that they implement? You know, they need to have baselines in place. They need to know where they're starting out from, but also where they're trying to get to along the way. And then as part of this process, you'll obviously be looking at things like, you know, complexity of implementing certain measures, the risk associated with them, how quickly you're going to get that time to get to the savings. So it's about focusing on the kind of high impact, low effort things in the first instance and prioritising that way.
Yeah, I think, and even if you don't have a sophisticated metering system in place at the outset to identify which bits of machinery are using energy, etc., I think you can gauge a fair idea just from looking at general consumption and baseline consumption to get an idea of exactly where your energy or which areas or buildings are using the most energy. And I think to a certain extent, again, by engaging with the people who are operating those machines, they will have an idea themselves potentially of what actions are causing the biggest energy spend and how that might be changed to spread it out or reduce it.
Yeah, definitely. That's always a very interesting process when you ask people for their ideas around what they think could change or what they think is inefficient, or, you know, how they could improve things, because they will always be different from most individuals that you have in the room, and that's why it's a great process, really.
Yeah, yeah. And we've got time for one more. This is the last question. We've got, this person says that they want to organise some workshops with different stakeholders, but they're not really sure who to invite to which workshops. So basically, should they arrange them in terms of job roles, departments, or is it all about having a complete mix?
Yeah, the latter in a nutshell. So, and I can't stress the importance of this element enough. You have to have a complete mix of people across the business in the room. And I mean, I can give you a kind of real example of that. So one of the customers that I work with, there are natural silos within the business. So the CFO is all around, you know, what are we spending? Are we tracking against budget? You know, where are we financially? He drives his people to procure energy, buy their energy at a lowest rate possible for the highest volume. Meanwhile, the energy and sustainability guys of this organisation are obviously trying to drive down how much energy they consume, which is great. But when they are successful at doing that, if they're not communicating with the finance guys are going to get fines because they've procured at set volumes. And if that interaction is not there, then you've got effectively two sides of the business, absolutely crucial sides of the business, pulling in opposite directions. And we see that all the time. So to have that full mix of people in the room, and again, you know, if it's a manufacturing site, have the production guys there, because ultimately we all know production is king. Everything will get blocked at that point. No, you can't shut down the site. No, you can't reduce load. You can't touch this. We can't change the process. We absolutely cannot impact production. So if you have those guys in the room from the outset and they're involved in all of the discussions and they're throwing these obstacles in the mix as you develop your plan, then they're going to be addressed as you go through it.
Yeah, I think it's also like what you said right at the beginning from the previous webinar about breaking down the silos, about it's not necessarily, behavioural change isn't necessarily going to come from someone standing up and saying, this is what you can do, this is what you should be doing. It's more of a getting conversations going between different groups, so that it's not necessarily knowledge, but understanding of the different roles and the impacts on each other, and how one person behaving one way has a negative impact on the other, and how they need to be working together really to have a bigger impact.
Yeah, exactly. It drives out all the negatives, or what may have previously been seen as negative people even. They always say no. There's more often than not a reason that they're saying no, because ultimately who wouldn't want to achieve savings and reduce consumption and save money effectively.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, I think that's it really for today. This webinar, like I said at the beginning, will be uploaded onto the Exchange. So if you want to watch it at a later date or share it with any of your colleagues, please do. If you haven't had a chance to ask any questions and something comes up afterwards, or one of your colleagues has one when they're watching this, then please just feel free to email me and I will get back to you. So thank you again for joining us on this webinar for the GSK Supplier Exchange, and we look forward to seeing you at a future one in shortly. Thank you very much. Bye.